I am live and started right on time, 9:45. That's when I had scheduled the live stream to start. I'm in a much more animated mood tonight. Uh, tonight being the Monday, the 7th of April, 2025. Andy, my amazing Border Collie Aussie Shepherd mix, jumping all over me for a treat. She doesn't care about the live stream. She just knows when I do a video, she gets a treat. All right, shake a paw, lay down. Oh, I got a good bark tonight. And there she goes. Candy is looked after. Now I can get on to more important matters. But first, if you're new, if you've never seen my live stream before and you like the content I'm putting out, I'm going to encourage you to like and subscribe to my channel. The YouTube game is tough. It's hard to elbow your way into the public discourse, something I endeavor to do. I'm a 58-year-old Canadian Forces veteran. Spent 10 years of my youth growing up in the United States. I think I have something of a unique perspective. I often on this channel call myself the poster man for cancel culture. I'm white, Christian, male, straight, tick all the boxes in the culture to be told to sit down and shut up. You're not allowed to express an opinion. And YouTube allows me to throw my voice out there. So I appreciate everyone who subscribed. I'm up around 1,100. If I can boost that, that would be awesome. I love seeing the live chat filled up. I've got Danny and Galfar already here, two regular participants. Danny in particular, Galfar is more recent. Both are from Montrealais. I am bilingual. I did spend time 3.5 years living in La Belle Province du Québec, but most of my content is in English. I do the odd video, parfois français, juste pour le fun. To keep my French working. I'm an Anglo first, though. I think that's pretty obvious. At any rate, the big news out today is that we have Chinese interference in the Canadian election campaign. But what's even more curious is the manner in which it is being reported. Cryptomeria has also shown up saying, I barely speak English. Oh, that's garbage. You speak English perfectly. Uh, I speak English, French, and I won't say the third. Uh, at any rate, everyone's saying hi to each other. Um, Interestingly enough, so what's happened is the something called CITE, which stands for foreign. It's a committee, a Canadian government committee that is an intelligence committee that it monitors foreign attempts at foreign interference in Canadian elections. And they held a press conference. I forget what CITE stands for. I'm going to be reading an article as reported by Reuters, Reuters. I say Reuters, some say Reuters. I prefer Reuters. Uh, Danny's saying we all know deep down about Chinese interference. What has happened is the way this is being framed is there all the headlines or a lot of the headlines are saying that Mark Carney has been the target. He's been targeted by the Chinese, putting a negative spin on it as if to make it sound as if Mark Carney, like they're trying to take Carney down, when in point of fact, if you bothered to read the articles, you see that what the Chinese are trying to do is to boost Mark Carney. And we have a not insignificant Chinese population in the nation state of Canada. We have somewhat, it's in the millions, and I think it's about 6% of the voting public, heavily concentrated in the urban centers, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, and elsewhere. Chinese communities can be significant in size. Like a lot of immigrant populations, they tend to cloister in, I don't want to use the word ghettos, they in communities, tightly knit. And this is something I've spoken to many times before on my channel. This is the standard operating practice with immigrant populations that come into Canada, going back to my own Irish ancestors, a lot of times what will happen is immigrant communities like to cloister in a urban center where if they don't speak English well, they can get by in their native, their heritage language. But let's get right down to the chase. How are the Chinese trying to boost Mark Carney? And a more important question I have is why? Why are the Chinese trying to boost Mark Carney? Does he need boosting? Does he need help? Does he need the interference of the Chinese Communist Party? Here's what the article says, as reported again by Reuters. This came out today. Canada said on Monday the most popular news account on Chinese social media platform WeChat was pushing false narratives about Prime Minister Mark Carney in a bid to influence the Canadian election campaign. So they're pushing false narratives. What are the false narratives? The information operation targeting, you see the way they're framing this, targeting Mr. Carney is deliberately amplifying narratives in a coordinated and inauthentic way on WeChat to Chinese audiences, including communities living in Canada, the Government Privy Council office said. And then it goes on in a statement. Ottawa said the account had targeted Carney's experience and credentials in a bid to manipulate Chinese voters. Targeted his experience and credentials in a bid to manipulate Chinese voters. What are Carney's experience? He has been governor of the Bank of Canada, governor of the Bank of England. And his credentials include a PhD from Oxford. He got his master's in economics from Harvard and his PhD in economics from Oxford. Now, are they amplifying the fact that it has been reported that academics have found 10 instances of plagiarism in Mark Carney's doctoral thesis? That came out about a week or so ago, that academics who are Canadian academics tasked with checking PhD thesis papers for plagiarism found 10 cases where Mark Carney plagiarized other academics. When you write a doctoral thesis, you are allowed to cite other individuals, as argued by Morgan or by Friedman, as argued by Adam Smith, as argued by Keyes, and then you can take word for word, you can quote those experts, and then you give a footnote at the end. Carney, what he did in his paper, according to academics with the University of British Columbia, is he presented ideas as his own that were not his own, and he either just summarized it or copied, in some cases, word for word, what others had said without giving the proper attribution. This is heinous, what we're witnessing right now. What we're seeing is the Chinese trying to influence Canada's election. Other articles have said that they are providing their competing narratives. On the one hand, they say they're boosting Carney's reputation for the fact that he's standing up strong to Trump in the United States. So that's the positive. The negative, they say, is they're talking about his time at the Bank of England, his time with the Bank of Canada, and his academic credentials from Harvard and Oxford. This, to me, is like when someone goes into a job interview and they're asked to list their most positive characteristic, and they say, oh, I'm really conscientious. That's my positive. What's your negative? What's the worst, the thing you need to work on most? And a lot of people, a lot of dim bulbs, they like to say, oh, I'm a perfectionist. And they say that on purpose because they know the impression they have is that an interviewer will like it if someone says, I'm a perfectionist. Oh, that's a bad thing. Like having a PhD from Oxford is a bad thing. Like being governor of the Bank of England and Bank of Canada is a bad thing. Uh, they're framing it this way in order to make Mark Carney look like the victim of a disinformation campaign. What is happening is the Chinese Communist Party wants Mark Carney to be Prime Minister of Canada. They know the man well. When he was still with Brookfield, when he was still the chairman of the board for Brookfield Asset Management and getting paid by the Liberal Party of Canada to be their top economic advisor, he took a trip to Beijing. He met with the head or the president of the Chinese Communist Party, the People's Republic of China. He met the top man. Then he went to the Bank of China, and for his company, Brookfield, while he's traveling on taxpayer dollars, while he's over there representing Canada, he manages to secure a loan for $250 million. I think it's 278 million in point of fact, 278 million Canadian dollars. He gets a loan from the Bank of China. Mark Carney is owned. Mark Carney is owned. This world is getting scary. The Chinese are the power on the rise. We just came out of the COVID era. Started in 2020. When did it end? We can argue that point. Did it end after the Freedom Convoy, after the truckers went to Ottawa and Hong Kong stood up for the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, for our Constitution, for the rule of law, the right to assemble, freedom of speech? How did the Liberal government, with Mark Carney as a top economic advisor, respond to that trucker convoy? They responded like the Chinese Communist Party. They went and they froze the bank accounts of hardworking Canadians who were exercising their constitutional rights. And our government, our Liberal government, with Mark Carney as the top economic advisor, froze it. Whether you liked or disliked the Ottawa convoy protest is irrelevant. If you believe in the law, if you want to live in a free and democratic society, you better not want the government to arbitrarily go into individuals' bank accounts, because the government doesn't like what is this, the Chinese social credit score, where how you behave determines the degree to which you're allowed to participate in society. Is this the kind of country you want to live in? Because if Mark Carney gets elected Prime Minister, we are on that slippery slope, and it's going to get steeper and slipperier. Slippier. No, I can't even say more slippery. Let's see what is being written in the live chat. Galfauer is writing, not just Chinese who interfere in our election. No kidding. No kidding. Well, at the end of the day, I think Chinese influence in Canada's political framework as a whole, and even into our media, is pervasive. It is pervasive. Why is the media trying to frame this as if Mark Carney, the Chinese have attempted to boost Mark Carney among expatriate Chinese individuals living in Canada, to boost his fortunes? And I need to get on to, why would they do that? Isn't Mark Carney like up 10 or 12 points in the polls? Are things a lot closer than we think? The Chinese, say whatever you want about them, but do not say they are stupid. They are the People's Republic of China and the Chinese Communist Party is highly sophisticated. If they thought that Mark Carney was going to romp on April 28th, they wouldn't engage in this type of behavior. And we, conservative-minded Canadians, Canadian people who love our freedoms, our rights, our liberty, our democracy, we need to talk loud and bold about this with everyone we come across, because a lot of Canadians just read the headline. That's all they're going to read. And the media knows that. They know that a lot of people only look at the headline. And so the headline is, key Mark Carney targeted by Chinese misinformation campaign. Oh, Mark Carney got targeted. Oh, the Chinese don't like him. The Chinese love Mark Carney and they want him as our prime minister. Mark Carney has openly talked about his desire to have the Chinese yuan, the Chinese currency, replace the US dollar as the world's primary reserve currency. He's talked up China just the same way that Justin Trudeau did. Justin Trudeau in 2015, addressing a room full of female voters in Quebec, was asked by someone in the audience if there are any countries in the world he admires. And Justin Trudeau famously said that he had a high degree of respect for the Chinese and their basic dictatorship and the way it allows them to do things on a dime, to make decisions and to cram things through without the going through this horrible democratic process that we enjoy in the Western world. And now we have Mark Carney. He thinks that the Chinese are the big champions of climate change, a country that is constantly adding coal-fired hydroelectric generation. They keep firing up coal-fired plants to fuel their growing economy. While in Canada, Mark Carney wants us to leave our enormous resources in the ground and wants Canadians to freeze in the dark, while China's economy booms. The world is shifting right now. We have the United States as the world's premier economic and military power in the world, but China is coming up fast. There have been a lot of forecasts out there speculating that China would overtake the US economically sometime between 2030 and 2035. Donald Trump in the United States, a very polarizing figure, is trying to put a spanner into the works, and he's trying to reassert American dominance and at least delay and perhaps forestall the Chinese from overtaking the United States as the world's number one economic power. And if they become the world's number one economic power, it won't be long until they become the world's dominant military power. Let me see what's we got Cryptomeria writing that Richmond, BC has entire malls only in Chinese, no French or English. Yeah. It's likewise, they call it up in Unionville, Markham. There's a Chinese mall. They're ubiquitous across Canada, Chinese groceries, Chinese stores. And is this a fifth column? Is this a Trojan horse within the Canadian body politic? It's an open question. I'm a very liberal-minded guy, broadly speaking. I think immigration is wonderful. It's needed. It's valued. I am of immigrant stock myself. I mentioned before my Irish heritage. And when the Irish came into Toronto in large numbers in the 1800s during one of the potato famines, or the potato famine, the articles, you can find archived news articles on what was being written about these horrible, lying, thieving, drunken, idolatrizing Irish. They're no good for Canada. We shouldn't be allowing so many of these Irish in. And we've gone through the same thing with every group that comes in to this country. And just if anyone's curious, English, Irish, Scottish, Welsh, that's my background. The four corners of the British Isles. And Cryptomeria brings up the point, he owes them a bunch of money. He doesn't. He arranged the loan for Brookfield Asset Management when he was chairman of the board, just as he arranged to, he sent a letter to shareholders of Brookfield Asset Management, encouraging them to vote in favor of the move that he proposed to take Canadian jobs from Toronto to New York City. And the shareholders, they listened to Mark Carney, they approved that move, and they took those high-paying Canadian jobs, moved them to New York City. Danny is writing that Carney is actually more pathetic than Justin. Wow. He's more beholden. He is more beholden to the Chinese probably than Justin Trudeau was. And Trudeau's out of the public eye now. Now we've got to we've got to target Mark Carney because he does not have Canada's best interests at heart. He is bought and paid for by communist China. I know I sound a bit like Les Nessman here, but the world, who was famously on the old WKRP, he was always talking about the communist menace. But the fact of the matter is, the world is changing, and we're seeing a move afoot towards talking about we need to restrict free speech. We need to restrict freedom of assembly. We need to place restrictions on the very foundation that made countries like Canada and the United States such amazing countries, that made us the envy of the world. Well, we need to restrict those things now. We need to copy China. China has, I mentioned, the social credit score. In the Western world, the degree to which you're able to participate in society is based on economics. It's a capitalist system. The more money you have, the more choices you have, the more ability you have to participate in society. Whether you can travel or not is dependent upon how much money is in your wallet or your bank account, not upon your behavior, not upon your political opinions. In China, what happens is if you jaywalk, your social credit score goes down. If you're late into work, your social credit score goes down. If you if you promote democracy, freedom of speech online, your social credit score will go down. And then when you go to travel, they'll say, no, you're not allowed to travel. Your social credit score is too low. A young person wants to go to a big street rave in Shanghai. Well, restricted to you have to have a certain social credit score in order to attend the rave. That's the type of system the Mark Carneys of the world want to bring into Canada, incrementally, bit by bit, slowly. It's been admitted that during the COVID era, the introduction of the vaccine passport allowed them to accelerate their plans towards the institution of something called a digital ID, biometric screening, where you're under Big Brother's watchful eye 24/7, 365. This is Mark Carney's world. This is what he wants to bring into Canada. He loves China. He loves their system. He loves the money they loan to his company, Brookfield Asset Management. How many shares does what's Mark Carney's ownership stake? How many shares of Brookfield does he have in his portfolio? We don't know because Mark Carney is not ethical. He is not willing to disclose that information to Canadians in advance of a general election. Why? I'll leave you to infer what you will. To me, the answer is obvious. It's because he doesn't want us to know because it would make him look bad. And so he hides behind the letter of the law, which says that having just been installed, coronated as Liberal leader and Prime Minister, that he has 60 days to provide that information to the Ethics Commissioner. And then the Ethics Commissioner reviews it, and 60 days later, it's disseminated to the public, by which time Mark Carney is hoping that he will have won an election and will be the leader of a majority parliament. That's his dream. And the only thing standing in the way of it is you and me. And we need to be loud, bold. We need to talk about this garbage framing of the news saying that Mark Carney has been targeted. No, Mark Carney wasn't targeted except to boost his polling, to boost his chances of winning the April 28th election. Danny saying to Cryptomeria, another one of the reasons I refer to Canada as, Danny does this frequently, calls Canada Chinata. And it's because we've had Trudeau for the last 10 years. Now it's been handed over to Carney. Carney is even more beholden to the Chinese than Justin, more than Justin was, Mark Carney is. And we've been told to fixate all on the orange man in the White House and to be all concerned about the orange man in the White House. That's not our main concern. Donald Trump, yeah, there are issues with Donald Trump. Fair enough. There are legitimate reasons to criticize Donald Trump. Granted. But a far bigger issue is China. Do we want to be living in a dictatorial system? Do we want to be living under a communist style dictatorship? And I would hope that the answer is no. There's a term out there, it's called sinophobic, S-I-N-O phobic, or sinophobia. And what it refers to is an irrational fear or hatred of all things Chinese. And in our politically correct world, I get the distinct impression that anything done in the Islamic world that is negative, you don't want to say anything, or certain individuals will keep their mouth shut because they don't want to be labeled an Islamophobe. A lot of people, they see the insanity of children being subjected to things like castration and double mastectomies, mutilating healthy tissue in children, but they won't say anything because otherwise they'll be labeled a transphobe. And people look and they go, oh, I don't want to say anything bad about China because then I'll be labeled a sinophobe. I don't want people to think I'm sinophobic. Well, listen, when you're criticizing China, you're criticizing their communist dictatorship. There's nothing wrong and there's nothing racist about having an ideological aversion to a communistic dictatorship. End of story. If you were opposed to Franco's Spain because of the fascist nature of his government, that didn't make you Hispanophobic. I just put that out there. And Danny is writing, Carney is not a victim of China. He is beholden and owned by China. And China will be China is already a superpower. They're the number 2 largest economy in the world. Their military is growing by leaps and bounds. Danny has pointed out on my channel something many will know. During the Trudeau Liberal era, we, the Canadian Armed Forces, were training Chinese soldiers on winter warfare, how to conduct battlefield operations in sub-zero temperatures. Winter warfare. Why are we doing that? Why? We should be seeking partnerships with like-minded Western democratic countries that value human rights. Do you think China? We've had already a liberal candidate, Paul Chiang from Markham Unionville, advocating that individuals go and kidnap a conservative candidate and hand him over to the Chinese consulate, and in order to get somewhere around a $200,000 Canadian reward, because Joe Tay, the conservative candidate in Don Valley North, I believe is the riding, Joe Tay has ticked off the Chinese. Beijing is not happy with Joe Tay because he advocates for freedom of speech and democracy in Hong Kong. The Chinese do not believe in freedom of speech. They do not believe in democracy. And so they put out an arrest warrant on Joe Tay, a Canadian citizen running for parliament, and Paul Chiang, a sitting member of the Liberal government and a former Toronto police officer for nearly 30 years, told a Chinese language media press conference there's a nearly a $200,000 reward, a million in Hong Kong's currency, a million Hong Kong, whatever won or whatever their currency is, 200,000 Canadian. So you can kidnap this guy, take him to the consulate. Just joking, but it is there. 200 grand. You can watch it. It's available all over social media. You can find it on YouTube, I'm sure. Paul Chiang, Chiang. And Mark Carney stood by him. Mark Carney said he supported Paul Chiang, that he would not kick him out of the party, that he would not remove him as a candidate for the riding he represents, Markham Unionville. However, Paul Chiang at least probably got a call from Beijing, maybe. I'm speculating here, and said, you know what, you better, Mark Carney blew it here. I think you better back out. Otherwise, it might look bad on him. And so Paul Chiang, with Mark Carney backing him, Paul Chiang on his own said, okay, I'm quitting the race. Anna Monarchy is writing, I thought there might be a Gordon live stream here. Checking the Wi-Fi. Turned out well. Good job. Thanks for showing up, Anna Monarchy. Yes, I am on live chat, not top chat. And Pork Chop is here talking about the fact that in China, you're not just dealing with the yuan, which is the Chinese currency, but then we've got Carney is a big proponent of CBDCs, which is a central bank digital currency. And what that would do for Canadians is it would mean that every single financial transaction that you engage in would be tracked. That's where the blockchain comes in. And every single transaction is monitored. Think you're going to slip $10 to your grandchild or, your niece or your nephew? Not without Big Brother knowing about it. Think you're going to go play a little game of Texas Hold'em with your friends and you lose or win $100? Well, Big Brother's watching. Is this the type of world that we want to live in 24-hour a day, 7-day a week, 365 surveillance, the surveillance state? This is what the Mark Carneys of the world want to move Canada toward. And it's going to be, the plan is for it to be incremental, boiling the frog, turning up the temperature just a little bit at a time. So that as we're boiling in our own juices, we say, oh, the water's just great. It's not too bad yet. Not too bad yet. Galfar is writing that the problem with China as a new superpower is the aging population. They won't be able to sustain their economy. They're 1.4 billion plus people. They have plenty coming up and behind, and they used to have something called the one-child policy. Imagine that. How would you like to live in a country where the government tells you how many children you can have? Do you want to live in that kind of country where the government decides how many children you can have? That's what they did in communist China. One-child policy. It's this constant narrative of scarcity. They've since removed the one-child policy, by the way. Cryptomeria is writing, social credit scares me. I couldn't imagine living in China, but where you're getting close to that level of dictatorship. And again, the thing is, they want to do it, the Mark Carneys of the world, the WEF, they want to move us toward that type of system, but they want it to be incremental because they're aware that if they ratchet up the heat too quick, we'll push back, as evidenced by the Ottawa trucker convoy. A lot of Canadians, though, the news told them that it was an illegal occupation. And if the news says it's an illegal occupation, well, then it's an illegal occupation. And if they're terrorizing the residents of Ottawa, Hong Kong, those horrible horns, Why were people terrorized by the Ottawa trucker convoy? Because so many had bought hook, line, and sinker the narrative that COVID is going to kill everybody. Back in March of 28, 29, March of 2020, March 18th, I think it was, the Imperial College of London, a top rated scientific school, medical science, came out. They had a coronavirus response team and they modeled the Great Britain and the United States. And they said that in the United States, that in the first year alone, 1 million people would die directly as a direct result of a COVID infection. 1 million. Canada, we're, in and around 10% of the American population, not quite. So commensurate numbers would have about 100,000 Canadians dying as a direct result of COVID, not someone who's 80, 89, 96 years of age on 10 prescription medications who can't dress, feed, bathe, toilet themselves, and has cardiovascular disease and is just, hoping to live for a few more months of diaper changes. No, talking about direct cause. And further, I read the report. It said that patients would be lining up 8 deep for a bed in ICU or critical care. And that narrative stuck with a lot of people. COVID's deadly. If you get that thing, you're going to die. You'll be on a ventilator. I got it in February of 2022. It was a 2-day nothing burger. I've had worse colds and I don't have a vaccine. So how is it that the deadly coronavirus was a nothing burger for a guy, well into his 50s who smokes? I was 2022, it's 2025, it was about 3 years ago. I was about 55 years of age. It was amazing. I was outside of a Little Caesars pizzeria here in Brighton, the town where I live. And there was Barry, a guy I know from a church I used to attend. And he was outside wearing a mask. And I said, Barry, you're wearing a mask outside? You okay? And he goes, oh, man, I just had COVID. Oh, it nearly killed me. Oh, yeah, really bad, eh? And he goes, oh, it's horrible. Thank God I had that vaccine. I would have died. I said, yeah, I got it back in February. This was, probably March, April of 2022. I said, I had it back in February. And he said, oh, it was a killer, wasn't it? And I said, no, for me, it was a 2-day nothing burger. And he said, yeah, well, it's because you had the vaccine. And I said, no, I never got the vaccine, Barry. And his eyebrows just about shot off his head. Cause and effect. I'm not saying that. I'm just relating my own personal firsthand experience with COVID. 2-day nothing burger. But people are very influenced by the news. And they're going to be very influenced by the reporting and the headlines saying that Mark Carney's been targeted by the Chinese. Whereas, targeted to boost him up, targeted to elevate his profile with Chinese voters. And there are millions of them in Canada. And Pierre Poilievre, someone has made a note here much earlier in the live stream. They've mentioned a live stream channel called Pleb. I'm going to ask Danny or Galfor or Porkchop or anyone who knows that station, put a link up here in the live chat. I do not mind promoting other content on my channel. The truth is what matters most of all. And apparently, what was being written was that that there were thousands of people watching the live stream and that it's a massive rally in Edmonton. And this is something that the mainstream media isn't going to portray. What I have seen of the mainstream reporting that I watch, I don't watch the nightly news. What I get of the news is from not from Facebook. Can't share news articles on Facebook anymore. What'll happen is if I hear a news story, like when I heard that Pierre Poilievre was in Kingston, I went online and I sought it out so that I could see the coverage. And the way that the mainstream typically covers Pierre Poilievre's rallies is they show Pierre Poilievre up at the podium and they don't give a representation of the crowd size. Whereas when they show Mark Carney in a pub in Victoria or wherever, they span the crowd, and it's a tiny little British pub, and they try to create the narrative that Mark Carney has lots of people around him. And the reason they do that, Mark Carney's not dumb. He picks a small venue so that it looks packed. So if you get 50 people in a small little British pub, hey, it looks like a big crowd. Whereas Pierre Poilievre is drawing thousands, and they're not showing that in the media. And I'm here to tell you right now, our political machinery, maybe even our courts, have been largely, in my opinion, infiltrated by communist China, and so they can frame the narrative. Anarchy says if they make speech restriction laws too strict and retroactive, I fear it's the gulag or disappearance for me. Read up on Mao Zedong and his they called it the Cultural Revolution. It was also called the Great Leap Forward, and how many 100 million Chinese are said to have died during that so-called Great Leap Forward. Stalin, another communist dictator, 60 million killed, many by starvation, to further this great communist experiment. And I don't know that you're exaggerating, monarchy. And Danny is writing that he would be the first person in history to have a way negative social credit score. Negative 1,000, negative 1 million points for me. You and me both. You and me both. There's a pastor here in town, Ryan. We, in the early days of COVID, were joking that we were going to be in one of the internment camps together, but that they probably wouldn't let us be together. They'd know that we were friends and they would keep us apart. Let's see what further is being written on the live stream. Danny's writing that I pronounce Chinada to sound like Canada, Chinada. Yeah, Chinada. That's the way I say it. And then talking about our Canadian Armed Forces training the Chinese how to conduct winter warfare, training our enemies how to fight in our country's environment is one of the dumbest things our military ever thought up. They learned to fight us in our own country, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. It wasn't, that those decisions are made at the political level. They're not made by senior military leadership. Anna Markey's writing, speaking of things along the lines of a central bank digital currency, unfair financial stipulations, that is, death tax, is the dumbest. Not sure if we have it in Canada. There is, to an extent. A lot of times when a person dies, they're subject to capital gains, final disposition of their assets. So, but I'm not an accountant or a financial expert. Danny's writing that some CBDC funds expire if not used in time. You can't save them, they'll disappear. How, it wouldn't be money in the sense that we have known money throughout our long history. And, I've thought about this before, the manner in which, money, we started out as barter. It was barter. If you went to Ireland, if you went to the British Isles, cattle were almost a form of currency. The more cattle you had, the wealthier you were in a country like Ireland. And then eventually, and for a very long time, coinage was the most popular, and people liked coins because coins had hard, tangible value. They were made of copper, of silver, of bronze, of gold. And clipping was a famous crime. Actually, clipping was a criminal activity. You take something like a pair of tin snips and you would clip off some of it's a silver coin. You clip off a little silver each time, and then you can, build some wealth. And and it was sometime, I believe, in the 1700s that paper currency started coming out. And paper currency was more or less a promissory note, but it was backed by hard assets. They're called silver notes or gold notes. Uh, my dad, who worked in the finance industry, had a $10 silver note. And that's what it said on it, $10 silver note. So it was backed, it was a promissory note backed by the fact that in a vault somewhere was $10 worth of silver that was tied to that note. So if you had $10,000 worth of silver in a vault, you could then issue promissory notes against the $10,000 worth of silver in your vault. And at first, paper money wasn't popular. People thought of it as like a note from home. They preferred coins. But over time, paper money became accepted. And now paper money has evolved into fiat currency, where there's no longer any hard, tangible assets like gold or silver backing it up. Now it's just perception of value. And so we've gone from hard, tangible goods, barter, cattle, whatever the case, to coinage, but that has hard, tangible value, to paper promissory notes, to paper fiat currencies. And now we've entered into the age where people make financial transactions all the time digitally, paying with Apple Pay and with swiping with their cell phone or with a card, and no money ever trades hands. And so this is just something of a natural progression. Danny's writing, police state and prison planet are two words that come to mind to describe where we are headed. And 1984 by George Orwell, his seminal novel, meets Brave New World, which was Aldous Huxley. And if you haven't read those two books, anyone watching my stream, and I'll remind you now, appreciate you subscribing and liking and commenting. The live chat is great, but if you come on late or you want to put up a comment in the comment field, I read pretty much all of them. I'm not going to say I'm 100%, but close. And I try to respond to as many as I can. Two great novels. You need to read them. There are elements of both in today's world. I've read both books. Brave New World is a lot more technologically advanced. Aldous Huxley's version, human reproduction has been automated. It's no one is born anymore. Everyone comes out of a test tube, and there's no birthing anymore. I can't remember exactly how children were born, but everyone was designed, programmed to be an alpha, beta, delta, or gamma. And then they would be slotted into society based on their intellectual capacity. And while they slept, they had something called hypnopedia that taught you that, oh, I'm so glad I'm a beta. Betas are the best. I wouldn't want to be an alpha. They're so horribly smart and they have to work so hard. And I'm glad I'm not a gamma. They're so terribly stupid. Being a beta is the best. And there would be a hypnopedic message, meaning sleep while you slept. This is crammed into your subconscious mind. Programmed happiness. And if you did get anxious, they had a drug called Soma, and it's kind of like pot, kind of like weed. And they would say, better a gram than a dam. Don't fuss and swear and be upset. Just take a Soma. Better a gram than a dam. Danny is providing the cut and paste, the pleb reporter on YouTube. And he's apparently at this pleb reporter. I'm assuming it's a guy. He's apparently at the Pierre Poilievre rally in Edmonton, Alberta. That's taking place probably as we speak right now. It'd only be, I guess, 8:34 in Alberta, and that kind of messaging, if you can spread it around, can build momentum, build support. But at the same time, don't forget to talk about the fact that China is targeting Mark Carney to boost him in the eyes of Chinese voters to maybe win a few extra seats in large urban centers in Toronto and in Victoria, Richmond, Vancouver, um, Toronto, certainly, Montreal. The large urban centers tend to have significant Chinese populations, and they will have a determining factor. The Chinese vote in certain ridings. You can't win the riding without getting a significant portion of the Chinese vote. And Danny's put it up twice. Um, Danny's writing, can't military leadership say, no, we won't do said thing? Then what happens to your budget? I mean, politics does everything is political, and the military is very political. It's not part of the political machinery, but it's still the game of politics is still played in the military at all levels. Um, Danny's writing that foraging will probably be made illegal at some point. Oh man. Uh, and Danny's suggesting another must read, Propaganda by Edward Bernays. And amen for this. Danny is saying Jesus is king because ultimately that's one thing. Look at the manner in which China treats its Christian population. The Bible is banned. You're not allowed to own the Bible. Chinese Christians are incredible. They have taken to memorizing entire books of the Bible because it's illegal to have it in your possession. Is that the kind of country you want to live in? Maybe you're not a religious person. Maybe you don't believe in Christianity. Maybe you believe all we are is matter in motion, and that in life is just time plus matter is plus chance. It's all just a random accident. The incredible, mind blowing complexity of this world, just luck, just happened by luck. Fair enough. But do you really want to live in a world where you don't have the freedom to choose, to pursue, to believe what you want to believe? And if you can believe it, just never talk about it, or your social credit score will go down and you won't be able to participate in society. Danny's writing that Pleb has finished the live stream, but the video is on the channel ready to watch. I'm going to be looking at it afterward. Danny's further saying that our military canvas that we have no budget. 3-4 days worth of firepower left. Well, looks like that's all the messages I've caught right up. I've gone just almost an hour. I'm going to end it there, but just to recap, China has been with their most popular. I'm just going to go back to how they framed it in the Reuters article. The most popular news account on Chinese social media platform WeChat, which is it's Instagram on steroids. WeChat. It's the most among Chinese speaking individuals. It's like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter all combined into one. It's huge. And the most popular news account has been boosting Mark Carney in an attempt to influence Canadian voters, most likely Chinese Canadian voters, to support Mark Carney by touting him and saying that he's standing up to Trump. Don't bug us. Leave China alone. But he's standing up to Trump. We're in a trade war with China. They've imposed 100% tariffs on certain Canadian agricultural products that are going to decimate the Western economy in provinces like Winnipeg. Massive tariffs on seafood, which is going to be horrific for our fisheries industry in BC and in the Maritimes. But you don't hear Mark Carney talking about that. The Chinese keep bringing on more and more coal-fired hydro generation for electrical power. Keep burning coal. And Carney says that they're an environmental leader. These big coal burners. Meanwhile, Carney wants our valuable natural resources stuck in the ground and doesn't want to build pipelines to get them to market. He wants everyone burning coal. because Brookfield Asset Management, which I imagine he's a shareholder, major shareholder. I can only guess because Mark Carney refuses to disclose his financial holdings. They invested huge in coal mines. So he wants people burning coal. He doesn't want them burning wonderful, clean Canadian LNG, liquefied natural gas, which burns much cleaner than coal. He doesn't want us selling our LNG to Japan, to South Korea. He wants them burning coal instead. So he pay back, that loan that he took from the Bank of China. Anyway, I've gone on far too long. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the thumbs ups. Thank you for the all the engagement, Danny and Guy Far and Anna Monarchy and missing one name. Oh, what was the name? Uh, can't keep them all in my head. I'm getting old. But thank you for all the comments. And I'll once again invite you to like, subscribe, share, and engage with me on my next live stream. And let's take Mark Carney down. We can do it. We can do it. If Mark Carney was poised to romp to a huge victory in April 28th, the Chinese wouldn't be interfering in our election. That's my opinion. The reason they're interfering, the reason they're trying to boost, the reason they're targeting Chinese Canadians in this WeChat platform with their number one news account is they want to boost Mark Carney's fortunes, and they don't want Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives running this country. So God bless. We'll see you all again soon. May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you, and may the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and grant you peace. And as I always like to say, he will. He's there. And the way you can find out about him is pick up this book. It's a copy of the Bible. All right. Good night, everyone. Thanks for chiming in, everyone. Really appreciate it. We'll see you tomorrow.